welcome to episode 4 of the Fightonomics podcast, the final episode of 2018. A lot to get into. We're again coming to you from the Toronto Reference Library at Yonge and Bloor. Marcus here again with Damien and Yusuf.
Guys, final episode for 2018, and we're bringing the heat today.
Yes, sir. Let's get it.
And a lot to get into. As you all know, there was a lot happening with what we finished off with last episode, Wilder Fury, which I think we should definitely get into.
Let's just get right into the stuff.
Let's just dive right in, and then obviously UFC 231, and then what's upcoming. So I think that's kind of where the trajectory of the episode was kind of headed. But let's get right into Wilder and Fury and what happened about a week and a half ago. What are your guys' thoughts on the fight?
Well, just to start off, I mean, it's safe to say that the glory of heavyweight boxing is back. I'd like to think that was one of the best boxing bouts I've seen in the longest time. I'm putting it right up there with Canelo Triple G number 1, if not better, in terms of just sheer excitement and intrigue and just back and forth. I mean, from a technical aspect, Tyson Fury brought the heat. A lot of us are saying he got the moral victory, if not the actual victory. There's a lot to talk about. So, Marcus, what are your thoughts on it? Going off preliminary thoughts.
Well, I think it's kind of perfect where we left off with the last episode is how we sort of finished off with Wilder and Fury and what's to come and sort of what we talked about and what was the keys to the fight. And we've sort of put our analyst's hat on and said, okay, Wilder's got that big right hand he can hit at any moment. Tyson Fury's got the better boxing skills. And we saw that in the fight, especially in the beginning. We saw Tyson Fury able to outbox Wilder. Now, we can get into the judging and the scoring system and some of the issues with boxing, corruption, if you will. But in terms of, the beginning of the fight, if we're going to go for timeline's sake, I thought the beginning of the fight was closer than maybe a lot of people thought. I mean, Fury was more effective. He was landing the cleaner shots. He was
more movement.
Outboxing, exactly. He used more movement. But, I could see why the result of a draw came up. We had our own group chats going. We all watched the fight separately, but I joked around right when the fight ended that I thought it would be a draw, but I was serious at the same time, and lo and behold, we did have ourselves a draw. And obviously, we could get into the inspiration of Tyson Fury, him getting up in the 12th round.
Like the Undertaker.
But I thought in the beginning of the fight, Fury was outboxing him, using his movement like Yusuf alluded to, and just hitting him with the cleaner shot, using his jab. But like we broke down in the fight, and like a lot of people did, any boxing fan would tell you that Wilder at any moment just has to be perfect, like he says, for that 1 second and connect with the right hand. And at certain moments of the fight, he did that. He scored 2 knockdowns. He might have squeezed by 2 other rounds, another round, and that's what gave him the draw. What are you thinking?
I agree. I think Wilder, they probably, because he got the 2 knockdowns and he probably got it made sense that there was a draw, and obviously because they want to see a second fight. I'm pretty sure we all want to see a second fight, because even leading up to that fight, it was also pretty entertaining. So it's a win for all of us as fans that they do it again, and this time it's basically for all the marbles. It's because it's now the next fight is who's really the best. So, and Wilder, if he truly believes that he's the best out there, then this next fight is going to give him another chance. And same thing with Fury. So, yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I definitely think, like Damien alluded to, the heavyweight division is back. I mean,
a
lot of the things we broke down, and it was only fitting that we ended it and we started off with Wilder Fury in this episode.
I think it's Joshua. What's he going to do next?
That too as well.
Chill?
It's like the heavyweight division now. There's a lot of interesting points to cover with the heavyweight division. There's a lot of different storylines that can come out of this fight. I mean, the heavyweight division before was Line of the Dinosaurs, essentially. It was, European fighters, Klitschko. Not a lot of people every day that know who these fighters are. And I mean, Wilder and Fury kind of brought it back. And this was the fight that I think the heavyweight division needed, that boxing needed. A lot of people have this saying of boxing can only go so far as their heavyweight division. And you're seeing, and we alluded to it, boxing is back. Boxing's on the rise. It is still that niche sport, but it's coming back into the mainstream, and you saw with Wilder and Fury and the power of Instagram and GIFs and memes that leading up to the fight and certainly after the fight and the and the Fury Undertaker rise in the 12th round, which we can get into as well. That was sort of what sort of stands out from the fight.
And it's crazy because, like, if we can just talk about each individual fighter or boxer for a quick second, Tyson Fury proved that, like, his whole story of mental health and depression and having that comeback story, it really was tantamount to him rising in that 12th round and just showing that I got up for all of you, and I had to show everyone who's going through something that you can get up and you can keep fighting the fight and keep fighting the good fight. And it just shows that through all the adversity that he's been through, he can still keep it coming. I mean, going back after the fight happened, I watched some of his older fights. For example, the Steve Cunningham fight that he had early on in his career. I mean, Cunningham knocked him down in the second, and he still came back and he peppered him, and he just ended up winning that fight. Tyson Fury is an amazing, amazing boxer, and it showed that night. And even after all the stuff, the challenges and trials and tribulations that he went through, he definitely showed that he could still hang in the heavyweight division. So I'm really, really looking forward for what's to come. And it's also kind of different from the first Canelo and Triple G fight, where it's like, oh, they're just doing this for this rematch for more money and whatnot. And yeah, they are, but the excitement is now here for a rematch, I think, for a second Wilder and Fury fight. And I think a lot of people, even casual fans, are going to be very invested in that and the heavyweight division for years to come now.
Yeah. I think the rematch for Canelo Triple G was needed, was warranted. We had a draw, we had a controversial decision. So we need a rematch. Same thing is going to happen in this one as well. The WBC has ordered it. We're going to see a rematch. And I don't think really, obviously money, it's a business. Boxing is a business. Money is obviously going to be a factor in the fight. But I just think, the whole sort of storylines that came out of the fight, even leading up to the fight, you have this monster of a heavyweight who's knocked out every single opponent he's faced, who's only gone the distance one time, and then the next fight knocked him out in the first round, with 40 wins, 39 knockouts. And then you have Tyson Fury, who had it all, who reached the highest level of boxing, the pinnacle of the sport, and then he loses it all. It's the perfect sort of movie-esque storyline that even if you put it in a movie, a lot of people would say would be untrue or unrealistic. So I think just the storylines, the inspiration, the passion that we all had watching the fight and texting in the group chats, I mean, sort of bringing that into here, it was an amazing fight, and it was probably one of the best heavyweight fights, right up there with Joshua.
Felt like a movie.
Exactly. Just to see Tyson Fury on the canvas, he's there. The ref
and all
is
of a sudden,
counting him out.
he gets back up.
I thought the ref was gonna wave it. I was just quiet, scared, just hoping he would get up, because obviously I had a rooting interest for Fury. His stories and inspiration, with his mental health struggles,
especially mental health,
depression. But I definitely think
even Wilder, like the reason why he got into boxing, because he wanted to support his daughter, because she, I don't know, I forgot what she has.
Yeah, she has spina bifida.
Yeah, right. So even that ties into it.
There's great storylines, and that's where I think we could sort of get into the fight goes on, and like we were alluding to before, the beginning of the fight, Fury sort of outboxing. Wilder becomes perfect for a few seconds. But I texted you this. I thought Fury got stronger after the first knockdown. I thought he was still effective. I thought it actually.
Yeah, even the second knockdown, he still got right when he got back up. I thought he was gonna be woozy.
That's what I mean. It
I
was
thought he
sort
was
of.
gonna
It's
be
not
like
like he
noodle
just
legs.
survived the knockdowns. He actually came back.
Combo. He hit him with a combo and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Fury's combination, his
Felt
boxing
like he was
skills.
knocked out. Like, I don't.
So,
think so.
what did you guys? I would like to sort of now transition into the decision of the fight, the fallout. I guess we can get into. What did you guys think of the decision? Was it warranted? Is it controversial? Are we blowing it out of proportion? Does this sort of corruption talk hurt boxing?
One judge said it was 115, 111.
That was sort of criminal. That was sort of the Adelaide Bird scorecard, and that was sort of criminal.
Oh, what was he smoking?
But what did you guys sort of think of the decision? Do you think we're blowing it out of proportion, controversial? Do you think Fury
really
won
makes
the fight?
sense. It makes sense because it's like, as I said, Wilder got the 2 knockdowns, so. And then after, plus it went all full 12 rounds. And once it goes 12 rounds, it can go either way in boxing. So it's not really. Plus, like money also plays into it.
Yeah, follow, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like it was controversial because of that one judge with the 115 to 111. But then again, like I completely understand that we're in the business of just promotion, and then more money is to be made from a second fight. I mean, like I was upset in the moment. I was texting Marcus about when it actually happened, but like the aftermath of the bouts, I guess I was just I came to terms with it, and I'm like, all right, if this is how it's going to be, then may as well just invest into the positive aspects of a rematch. And I think we're all pretty much excited. Like I said before, like we're all excited for the idea of a second fight between these two, because now it's just going to be like, okay, who really is going to be the baddest person in the world right now? And I think Oscar De La Hoya also said that this might end via knockout.
Yeah.
In a rematch. So, and I think that's how it's going to happen too in a rematch. I mean, like they both understand each other, but yeah, like going into a second fight, I'm completely okay with the decision, but only after a day after it happens.
Yeah, see. For me, there's multiple levels to this whole corruption, this whole decision, this whole stigma surrounding boxing. I did think Fury did enough to win the fight. I thought he dominated not dominated, but won most of the rounds with his boxing skills, fluidity, his movements, his footwork. So I think, and especially, you know, in the beginning, the first 2 rounds, I think Fury won, if I remember correctly. The third round, I think because I sort of scored the fight in my head as I'm watching a little bit, trying to understand. I think I scored either it was the second or the third for Wilder. I mean, he stole one of the first few rounds. And then he might have stole one of the ones towards the end of the fight, maybe the middle rounds. And then he's had the 2 knockdowns. Those are the 2 rounds. Obviously, he's going to win definitively in the 10-8 because of the knockdown. So, I mean, I could see where the draw comes in. The first Canelo, as we're comparing it to the first Canelo and Triple G fight, which is sort of another pinnacle fight that's bringing boxing back in the middleweight division, another story division in boxing with the likes of Sugar Ray, Thomas Hearns, you know, the Hitman, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, Roberto Duran. Just like the heavyweight division, you know, we have a fight here that's sort of the fight to bring it back, and we have a controversial decision ending in a draw. You can sort of see why people are throwing shame and screaming corruption. But for me personally, I don't know about you guys, I feel like it's hurting the sport more than helping it. I see why they're calling for corruption, they're calling for change, and I'm sort of the personality of anti-establishment, fighting the power. I'm very in support of, you know, fighting these sort of the change that, you know, bind us in society, and sort of I'm all for it. But I think we're going a little too, me personally, I think a lot of boxing fans and analysts are going too far in stating that, you know, there's corruption and, you know, it was a good fight, it was a close fight. This is sort of what you have when you have 3 judges. Yeah, you want the same thing. You want them all to be educated. You want them all to have the same viewpoints. But at the same time, we're 3 different people here. We might all have 3 different opinions on the fight, and that's when you're going to get. Now, when you have 115, 111, there becomes a huge issue with that.
Yeah.
That's where I think the problem was, and that's where I think the Adelaide Bird problem was.
Right.
We're highlighting that.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up, Marcus, because I remember in the first aftermath of the fight, like I saw exactly what you're saying. Michael Kissia, the MMA fighter, he said the exact same thing. He's like, boxing, I love you, but you're so corrupt.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you bring up an interesting point, because I never really thought about it in that way. It's like how far can we push this corruption element without it being, if it's actually corrupt at all? I mean, like, sure, Teddy Atlas, for example, is always going to like scream corruption, and he's going to say, and because he's been in it for forever, and he's seen it from the very get-go. But at the same time, like I never really thought of it before, as in like how far can we actually push this notion of corruption in boxing without it being controversial? Like I said just now, like I don't mind there being a rematch between Wilder and Fury, because I think it's warranted, like you said. But it's not the same feeling that I share with, for example, the first Triple G and Canelo fight.
Yeah.
When I thought Triple G like won that fight by a mile.
Yeah. That's that. You see, when I can see why there's people are screaming for corruption. I personally do believe the sport of boxing, there's corrupt elements to it. Teddy Atlas has alluded to it, and I believe him what he says. But when you can, for this fight, I don't think the sort of scream for corruption is warranted. I think with the Canelo Triple G fight, where you have Canelo, the biggest star in boxing, which we'll get into his fight upcoming in a few days with Rocky Felding for the super middleweight title on DAZN, which we can get into the pay-per-view
DAZN.
model and structure, Oscar De La Hoya. There's lots to get into, but just
Pay-per-views is
sticking with
dying.
Wilder and Fury and the follow from that, I do think that sort of it's not warranted to scream corruption on this fight, because you can make the argument Wilder did steal maybe one round other than the knockdown rounds, and then or another round, and that gives him the draw, right? So where it's Triple G and Canelo, it's a little bit harder because the rounds are so much closer to say, okay, which I thought, yeah, you can make the argument of a draw, but it's not as easy to make that argument. But okay, we have Canelo who won the first 3, and then we have Triple G and the last 3, and then we have Triple G winning all the middle rounds. Okay, right? But for this fight, I think, it was a little bit close. There's some rounds that, maybe Wilder might have stolen one judge's scorecard. But I think just screaming corruption is going to hurt the sport when, yeah, you're going to have a couple close fights. Now, you want to rechange the judging model, which I don't know if you guys think boxing should or MMA should. That's another topic for another day, maybe. But for me personally, this is the structure that they have. They've had it for over 100 years, maybe even longer. Since the beginning of time, MMA has adopted the same rule structure.
Imagine if they made like the fans judge the fight instead of the judges.
But then that becomes a problem because then you have popularity.
Exactly.
Fury,
it's
that's
like
why
it won't even. That's why they say like don't leave like the
fight in the hands of the judges. Yeah,
the hands of the judges.
I think that Joe Rogan. Speaking of MMA, Joe Rogan has stated that he believes there should be 8 judges, 10 judges, expert judges. And I, to be honest with you, I think, that sort of becomes problematic.
It's a fire alarm.
Looks like we have a fire alarm in the building going off. That's why
too much fire in this podcast.
I don't know if we're supposed to.
Everyone looks chill, so it doesn't even look like nobody's dying.
Looks like someone might have pulled it by accident, but just going off.
Fire.
I guess we could pull the fire alarm on Wilder and Fury.
Yeah.
Just to sort of.
Fire keep blazing.
Just to sort of keep the episode flowing.
Yeah. Anyways, back to more important things.
I don't think we should necessarily sort of, to use the pun, pull the fire alarm on this fight.
Puns, we got them.
Corruption in boxing, right?
But just to switch gears for a second, because I think we analyzed it as much as we could. Can I just give a quick shout out to HBO Boxing?
Yeah, of course.
And the end of HBO Boxing. As a kid, my dad introduced me to the world of boxing, and I fell in love with HBO Boxing. Jim Lampley, for example, was the guy who specifically made me fall in love with it. Everything about HBO Boxing, Boxing After Dark, to the 30 on 30s, and it's just like it's the end of an era. If you watch Jim Lampley's emotional tribute at the end of HBO Boxing last Saturday.
Yeah, I retweeted it. It was very emotional.
That was very emotional, and even though all good things must come to an end, I just want to say that it's been an amazing run.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, a slight interruption. So I guess you can sort of consider this part 2. We had a false alarm. So
just a minor interruption.
One of the joys of recording in a public library instead of our own studio, which we should be working on. But just to sort of kick it back into Damien leading off with the HBO Boxing.
So we
wanted
just
to sort of pose a question to the group.
Exactly. Just left off with HBO Boxing and its historic run. I just want to ask you guys, what's your favorite HBO Boxing moment in its history, in its 40 plus years of history there? Because I definitely have my favorites.
Yeah.
I mean, I was never, to be honest, I was never really the biggest Mike Tyson fan. But when Buster Douglas did the improbable, I gotta say that was one of the greatest moments, if not one of the best moments in sports history.
Which they have the ESPN 30 for 30. I think that just came out yesterday, or it's debuting today, 42-1.
Exactly.
Should be a good watch.
And also, there's a bunch of other moments that I really enjoyed. Of course, you have Julio Cesar Chavez, and you have Floyd Mayweather. You have Pacquiao in there too.
Oscar
De La Hoya, of course.
With Dana, which we might
get
into in a future episode or later on.
So much rich history there, and if you're just a combat sports enthusiast by heart, you know that for at one point or another, you went back and you saw HBO Boxing in all its glory.
For me, I got 2 sort of memories that sort of stand out. one that one that a one that sort of I found and discovered later on because I never really grew up watching boxing. I didn't have anyone to sort of show me the sport. It wasn't until, to be honest with you, I got into MMA and boxing. I just sort of watched the Pacquiaos and the Mayweathers because right before I got into MMA, that was sort of the two marquee fighters, the only guys I really understood to watch. But going back and learning about the history of boxing, the first and sort of the pinnacle of my HBO boxing memory is the first Mickey Ward Arturo Gatti fight. And as an aspiring sort of broadcaster and commentator, Jim Lampley, who gave off that emotional send off. I mean, not to sound corny or overdo it, I was watching that video while my dad was getting gas in the car. Sort of came up on my Twitter feed, and I did sort of get a little bit emotional watching it because you could see the passion he has for the sport. But getting back to my favorite memory is there's a moment in, I can't remember what round, I think it's the 9th, the 10th, they call it the round of the century. Gotti and Ward going back and forth like straight out of a scene of Rocky. And I believe it's Gotti that's rocked or Ward, and they're going toe to toe. And then you just hear Jim Lampley with a great call. I can't remember the referee's name off the top of my head, but he says his name and he goes, "Stop it. You can stop it any time you like." And you hear the explosion of the crowd, and he kind of sends them off. And that's sort of one of my favorite calls and iconic moments, like you said, of HBO. And then it's the Canelo Triple Gs, which, reinvigorates the middleweight division. I sort of feel like that's where we sort of have the memories of HBO boxing.
Mine is when I forgot who Floyd faced.
What was
Mayweather.
it? The Victor Ortiz,
Victor
the Larry
Ortiz.
Merchant?
Yeah, Larry Merchant. If I was 50 years younger, I'll kick your ass.
Yeah, that is an iconic moment. That is a great moment, actually.
Yeah.
I think that sort of summarizes
That was the jokes.
some of the
If I
the
was 50
heydays of
years
Floyd
younger, I'll
Mayweather
kick
and
your
Larry
ass.
Merchant, and
What are you gonna do, old man? What you Floyd want to?
so I think that is a
want to
great
scrap with that old granny.
HBO send off and memory and iconic moments. Just to sort of tie in and sort of use a great segue. HBO adopted the pay-per-view model. I mean, they had the Boxing After Dark and the pay-per-view model. We have Canelo upcoming here. We have Anthony Joshua already on DAZN with Matchroom Boxing, Eddie Hearn, his promoter. We have Canelo Golden Boy Promotions signing the most lucrative contract in sports, let alone
Crazy.
boxing, with DAZN.
365 or what is it?
Yeah.
Mil?
Speaking of Anthony Joshua, just to sort of wrap up, I sort of wanted to just tie in some more Wilder and Fury and wrap up the fallout. Where do you think this leaves Anthony Joshua, the Wilder and Fury fight? Yusuf, you want to kick that off? Where do you think this leaves Anthony Joshua? In a good spot, bad spot?
I mean, who's he gonna fight next? Because that's the next opponent for him.
See, there's been some
is he gonna
news.
fight like some
He's got an April date at Wembley Stadium. Opponent to be named. He, I think, wants it to be Wilder or Fury.
But as fans, we want to see the best versus the best. Like he's
Yeah.
the next opponent. He's not gonna face like it's either.
I don't think he will. That's what I mean. He's waiting. April.
Yeah.
He said April is his
I think
date.
he's just chilling until
Whichever
he finds
fighter
out.
wants to fight him, whether it's Fury or Wilder, he's willing to wait. But April is his next date. Wembley's the venue. I don't know what date in April, but that's what they're leaning towards. But getting back, like, where do you think this leaves Joshua? Does it leave him in a good spot, bad spot? I got
feel
a
like
couple
in the
thoughts
middle.
on that.
It's like I don't know if it's good or bad for him because, I mean, he can just. I mean, I don't think he's in a rush to get back in the ring, but I think at the same time he does want to face Wilder, or I think he wants to face more like Wilder. 'Cause I feel like that's like that, like rival and the tension that's been going for quite some time. So, yeah, I feel like it's in the middle because he's just gonna wait and see who wins, and then that's when things will pick up.
I think for me, I think it's hurting him more a little bit. But I do agree with you. It's kind of in the middle. But
Yeah.
I'm leaning towards the side of hurting him. And here's why I'll break it down. Joshua, like Canelo, and why a lot of people are sort of getting behind Tyson Fury and maybe even now have a newfound respect for Deontay Wilder, is they're willing to step up and fight the best. Tying it back to Canelo Triple G, because I think the trajectories are the same. The divisions sort of have the same storied history.
Mm-hmm.
Canelo, and people were calling for the Canelo Triple G fight. I remember talking to you,
Yep.
going to school and saying this is going to be the next big fight. And we had to wait 2 years almost till it was first brought up by Max to Triple G and Canelo after every fight. When's the Triple G fight? When's the Triple G fight?
100%.
Joshua is sort of in that same sense, and rightfully so, because he is the cash king. He sells out Wembley. That's 80, 90,000 people. If his fights were on pay-per-view, which they're not, I'm sure they would do close to 1 million buys.
Right.
It's Canelo Alvarez and Anthony Joshua right now as the two biggest stars, with Canelo being one and Anthony Joshua being the 1B, and more I would argue the 2.
Yep.
So in that sense, he holds all the chips, he holds all the cards, and follow the money in boxing, as Teddy Atlas would say, going back to the corruption talk. He sort of has all the chips in his corner, right? He's going to wait, play it safe, let Wilder age a little bit, let Fury fight, let them get in a few wars.
And it's interesting you bring
play
that
it cool,
yeah,
right?
It's interesting you bring that up too, because like going back to the build up of Fury and Wilder, like they butted heads for promotion's sake, sure, but when it came to like a middle point where they both can agree on, they always agreed that Josh was kind of ducking them in a way. But even Wilder said that my team sent out the contract to your team to fight. You're a coward. You're this and that. But is he really though? Is he really? Because going back to your point, because maybe he really is just playing the long game, because he's playing he's moving specific chess pieces around like a Floyd Mayweather would.
I wouldn't go, because I'm gonna be honest with you. I do have a vested, I like Anthony Joshua. He was up until this Tyson Fury comeback, because I'm gonna be honest with you, I wasn't never a big fan of Tyson Fury's whole talk, but just his story and his ability to come back. I thought honestly, Tyson Fury to me is probably my favorite fighter at heavyweight right now. It was Anthony Joshua. I mean, getting off against, knocking down Klitschko, that was the fight of the year.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I believe it was 2017.
It was.
Now we might have the fight of the year in 2019. Going back to my point though, is Anthony Joshua, yeah, he was my favorite heavyweight, but like a lot of fans, you can sort of see that, okay, it's time for the best to fight the best. I'm not here to, for you to milk it any longer. You had Wilder and Fury step up. Different, like I said, going back to Canelo Triple G. It was Canelo and Triple G and then everybody else.
Yep.
You didn't have sort of a third party in the hat.
Yep.
At heavyweight, you have a 3-headed monster. So I could kind of see why Joshua's going to sit back. But at the same time, as a fan,
inevitably,
speaking as a fan rather than, pretend analyst, whatever you want to call it. Speaking as a fan, let's go, Joshua. Step up here, fight, because your act is sort of getting, I'm kind of getting annoyed with it. I'm a huge fan of Fury. I will be now. If he fights Joshua, I'll cheer for Fury. Fury's my guy at heavyweight. I want to see the underdog win. So to me, I'm thinking it's hurting Joshua with the fans, maybe his legacy, his reputation. But then again, if he fights Wilder this year, that'll all go to wash, right? Because it won't be that much longer, and it won't be that much prolonged and delayed, and the fight will build itself. We don't want to see this too late. We don't want to see, I wouldn't say Canelo Triple G, but I'm trying to think. I can't off the top of my head think of a fight, a comparable. But to me, that's where I sort of see Anthony Joshua in the sport of boxing right now.
Just going back to the lighter weight divisions real quick. Just want to give a shout out to our boy Lomachenko.
Yes.
And just what he masterfully did last Saturday on ESPN. Pedraza, for all intents and purposes, was a pretty worthy contender. I got to give it to him. He stepped up. But when that 11th round came to Lomachenko, my goodness, the distance, the angles, the just peppering him with shots from every single angle, like that is a deadly guy inside that boxing ring. So just to switch gears, like you said, like we have the middleweights and we have the heavyweights, but also the super featherweights and the lightweights there.
Yeah,
I think they can definitely think they can be up there in a few years' time. Who I'd like, and for like to get a 3-headed beast there for comparison's sakes for the lightweight guys, I could definitely see like a Gervonta Davis fighting Lomachenko in a year's time, and definitely see the promotion machine rolling out for them. So real quickly, I definitely do think boxing is coming back. And
definitely.
Boxing is like, it's always been one of the most purest sports in our history, and I'm just very happy to see where it's been, the little slump that it's had, but its comeback is always the greatest moment.
It's a great time to be a boxing fan.
For sure.
It literally is probably one of the best are fighting the best. Speaking of Lomachenko, and we'll sort of get into it because the fight is in March, so I'm sure our next fights will preview it. We have Mikey Garcia stepping up. 2 weight divisions, going from lightweight to welterweight to fight Earl Spence, the baddest man. A lot of people are saying at 147, and I tend to agree. I'm obviously going to root for Mikey there. Mikey is now the next fight to make with Lomachenko when he comes back down. A lot of people are saying Loma's willing to wait for him. To be honest with you, I didn't watch the fight. We had sort of what we're going to get into next, UFC 231.
Fire.
We have UFC 231, which is where
The blessed era.
was where my viewing interest went into, So, I mean, I only saw highlights of the fight, clips, different analysts' viewpoints on it. But of course, Lomachenko, pound for pound, you can argue is the
He's a
best fighter.
machine.
His footwork, his angles, his movement, just the speed, So it's going to be an interesting time for boxing. But
Wanna
now
move on
shifting focus into
to
UFC 231.
Okay.
Obviously, the marquee fight, the main event, lived up to the hype. We sort of coined it as a pick'em fight. A lot of analysts were stating
I
it
thought it
was
was going to be
a fight.
I thought it was close.
It wasn't necessarily a close fight, but Brian Ortega showed a lot of heart. What did you guys think of the Holloway-Ortega fight?
I thought Ortega landed some good shots, but he landed some good. But the thing with Max Holloway, that guy is like a zombie. Like, he can take shots, but he'll give it to you, and he'll come straight. He comes straight at you, and he will not get tired. And I think I was something crazy. In the fourth round, he landed, I think, like 120 something significant strikes. And he's 27 years old, and he's already landed the most significant strikes in the history of the UFC. Like, that's crazy. But in the fourth round, he really picked it up, and it was like not even didn't even look like a contest anymore. It was just, he just wanted to just destroy Brian Ortega's face and give him I'll give Brian Ortega credit. Like, he took the punches. Like, he took a lot of punches to his face, but eventually Max Holloway just outclassed him, man, and showed why he's 13 fight winning streak, and I think it's tied. Is he tied with I think he's tied with GSP and Demetrius Johnson.
For longest
He's
winning
up there
streaks.
with if you look at that list, that's all the GOATs. Like, when you talk about the GOATs, those are all the GOATs, like John Jones, GSP, Anderson Silva, Demetrius Johnson, and then he's in there. I don't see Conor McGregor on that list.
No.
Max Holloway is on that list, and then you give him credit. He's the best of the best. You can make a case that he is the pound for pound best fighter in the UFC because he cleaned out the featherweight division, and now I think for him, it's obviously, like Dana White's right, it's for him to move up to 155. And in my opinion, face Conor McGregor, because with that fight, you can determine who's the greatest featherweight of all time. That can determine that, and also it will determine who's also the top contender in the lightweight division. And I think it will be that's the fight to make, in my opinion. As much as like McGregor has so many fights that he can do, like Nate Diaz obviously, but Nate Diaz is just chilling, smoking weed. That guy doesn't even give a hell. But right now, I think it's Max Holloway. That's his next fights with Conor McGregor.
Yeah, I think sort of going into the fight, I thought it was a great fight, a classic fight. It didn't necessarily have the back and forth. I mean, Ortega showed a glimpse of it in the third round.
Couldn't take him
A
down.
lot more head movement. He used a lot more
Couldn't take him
movement.
down.
Couldn't take Max Holloway down. Max Holloway is sort of, he's like a super powered Michael Bisping, I would sort of equate him to. He doesn't have the knockout power,
Or Nate
but
Diaz.
he has the fighter IQ, and he just gets stronger and stronger as the fight goes on. To me, I think Max Holloway is the greatest featherweight of all time.
Yeah.
He beat Jose Aldo 2 times, who to me was the featherweight GOAT of all time, even though he lost to McGregor. I thought Max Holloway, to me, beating Aldo twice, doing what he did to Ortega, who was the biggest threat to his title, probably the toughest challenge he might have faced.
Yeah.
An undefeated guy who finished the only man who never been finished in the division, Frankie Edgar. So to me, I don't think there's any debate. Max Holloway is the greatest featherweight of all time.
He has nothing else to prove in that
I
division.
don't think there's any other matchups for him at featherweight.
Who else is he gonna face?
Frankie Edgar. I mean, he just came off a loss. What, Yair? Yair's only had one win. I mean, he came off the loss against Frankie. So, I mean, the featherweight division, there's nothing left for him to do.
Mm-hmm.
To me, if he moves up, I sort of think he should have relinquished the belt. Because once you move up and go back down, GSP's alluded to it with the Roy Jones example, going back and forth in weight isn't
Mhm.
necessarily a good thing, especially in MMA.
Right.
I mean, I just don't see any other fight. For me, Holloway and McGregor would be a great fight to make.
Mm-hmm.
Even having Holloway move up and challenge for the belt, I mean, but then you skip over Tony Ferguson. So there's
And
a lot of
yeah,
different
exactly. And that's what I wanted
options.
to
I mean,
get right into.
There's so much different options we can
If
go
Holloway were to move up into that Shark Tank that is the lightweight division,
with.
there that can sustain years to come for fights, for a number of fights. I mean, like, we got even Poirier to talk about
That's
in
what
the
I mean
lightweight
too,
division.
yeah.
I'm hoping that Nate and Poirier match fight still gets rebooked, because that should be interesting. But at the end of the day, for the top dog spot for the 155-pound division, Tony Ferguson and Khabib has to happen.
Yeah,
That has to happen
for
100%.
Also, I think this week is Kevin Lee and Ali Quinta.
Yeah, it's coming up this
I
weekend.
think if Kevin Lee wins that fight, then you can put him up in that conversation too.
Yeah.
Even
I mean-
what's
Ali
his name?
Quinta?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ali Quinta.
There's a lot of interesting fights. If I was in Max Holloway's camp, 'cause I'm just sort of thinking about it now, I would recommend that unless he's able to fight Conor or for the belt, which isn't necessarily fair for the division, but being like putting my Max Holloway camp hat on, I would recommend he stays at featherweight unless he gets guaranteed that a Conor fight's on the horizon or a title shot. But then again, you still have Tony, Khabib that needs to fight, Poirier's in the mix. I sort of put Holloway in that division. I would sort of rank him just right behind Poirier, because I mean, Poirier has the win streak going. He's got, I think 5 in the last 6 wins. He's got good wins against Justin Gaethje. But then if I was Holloway, I wouldn't want to go up and work my way up another division. I'm the champion at 145. You granted Conor an immediate title shot.
Yeah,
I at
I
least
want
want
same.
a top contender or
Yeah.
a title shot.
For me, if I was him, if it was the money fight, I'll obviously fight McGregor. If it was like the fight that I want to see also is him against Tony too.
Yeah.
Tony Ferguson is also, if he can get a fight against him, that's pretty, because you're facing arguably besides Khabib, because Khabib, I think ever since he destroyed, we saw what he did, what he's been doing for years. He is the king of that division. But Tony Ferguson, I think, is right behind him. So if I was Holloway, I would also take a fight against Tony, of course,
That's
because that would be a
interesting.
crazy fight. That would be like two guys that the way they fight is like they come at you. They can go for rounds. Stand and bang. Like, they will not get tired. It will just be an amazing fight to watch, in my opinion, because it would just be a war, man. It would be crazy.
It's very interesting to see, where the UFC is going to go in 2019, and sort of leading off on that and the fights to make.
Lightweight is
sort
like
of-
crazy.
I sort of have a question to pose. I mean, I saw the rumor yesterday, or the picture. I don't know if it could necessarily be categorized as a rumor, but through Ariel Helwani, the UFC is looking to change the belts, the model of the belts, sort of the WWE. What is the biggest
Well, they-
change? It could be
what they gonna-
production-wise. It could be
What they gonna bring?
broadcast schedule-wise. What is the biggest change you guys want to see in the UFC for 2019? Because I mean, it is a big year, and they're changing
I think
it's a year.
I
it's
think
gonna
if
be
they're
a new
smart-
era, they're sort of categorized.
If they're smart, maybe take a page out of like Bellator, how they signed that deal with what's it called again? No,
Paramount Network,
No.
that they are owned by them.
DAZN.
Oh yeah, DAZN, yeah.
DAZN. Because like, if you be real about it, I've never paid for a pay-per-view
Mhm.
from my own personal
Yeah, yeah.
experience. I've streamed,
Yeah.
and it's pretty good streaming too. I mean, there's streams out there that's pretty good. You don't care if you can get it for free, and it's like, maybe if it's a little behind, you don't really care. But
no.
I think streaming is pretty. I mean, a lot of people use it. Pay-per-view, I feel like is dying down,
Yeah. So
because it's pricey. It's like people are not gonna pay that much when they
you'd
can
like
get it
to
for
see
free
a
on the
change to
internet.
The pay-per-view
I would like to
structure.
see that, yeah, because I think that's the way it's going now. Like
Yeah.
pay-per-view buys, it's really
I think that's a great point, and like what's going on today right now as we speak, Oscar and Dana White going back and forth. Oscar sort of stating that the pay-per-view model is dying. We talked about HBO, and that's one of the reasons HBO got out of the business.
Mm-hmm.
Showtime's really the only one left.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of agree. The pay-per-view model structure, it's the new age, the streaming age, the internet age. You're sort of going to see the the changing of, you even look at the way people consume TV shows now.
Yeah.
You have Netflix, Amazon Prime,
Mhm.
Crave, all
Mhm.
these different streaming platforms
Mhm.
where people aren't watching things, especially with TV shows live. Well, now when it comes to sports, that's the
Mhm.
only thing that's sort of
Mhm.
sticking around in the live
Mhm.
model. But pay-per-view itself, spending 89.99,
Yeah.
79.96, whatever it is, $50
Everything is being done right now in this current technological age that we're doing
Yeah.
for the convenience of the consumer. So, like we've been talking about, like pay-per-view is such an outdated model right now. There is no way in hell that for a single household, I think somebody is going to spend about 60 to 70 bucks on one show each month, just when they can just go to their like local bar, for instance, and just watch it there, or they can just stream it from the comfort of their home for a monthly subscription.
Exactly.
So it really is the name of the game right now, and like you said, with like TV and movies with Netflix, I think even we're here in Canada, so Cineplex is even going to a subscription based model in the future as well. So everything is being done for the convenience of the consumer, and as combat sports fans, what I want to see in the years to follow, it's the 25th anniversary of the UFC, so you got to make these big changes. Like, we're going to have these lucrative business deals and whatnot, but I think that they're putting the fans first as well to give them the most content possible for the lowest price possible as well.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to see, just more content for ease of access for the consumer.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think that's a great point, is changing the pay-per-view model, I think, is the way to go. Like I said, we're sort of in the internet stage, the streaming service stage. If you look at, we have the WWE changing belts. UFC is going to use that model. Why not adopt another WWE model?
WWE Network.
WWE Network, exactly. I mean, the WWE Network has sort of, when the WWE introduced it, has sort of met with a little bit of resistance. And from what I've heard from different business sectors and different analysts in the business, is the WWE Network and their model has actually made the WWE
convenient,
pay-per-view stronger. I mean, they have over I think they're close to 1 million subscribers of the WWE Network. That means,
and I think it's the same price as Netflix, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about $9.99,
and you get
$10.99
each
a
month, and you get all the pay-per-views. You get
pay-per-views, right?
WrestleMania, you get all kinds of like exclusives. Yeah, the extras.
I think definitely think it would be wise for the UFC to sort of come out with their own
WWE,
network.
they were ahead
and
of the
adopt
game.
that model. I think that would be great for the UFC. I don't know if they necessarily have the resources. I mean, they did spend $4 billion for the company, $3 billion, whatever it was, for the company.
It's funny because like the UFC kind of has something like that right now in preliminary stages, like Fight Pass.
Exactly.
But if they fully blow it up into like a WWE Network sort of subscription, oh my goodness.
Yeah, because Fight Pass gives you different fights to watch, but it doesn't necessarily give you
all the
pay-per-views.
events.
It doesn't give you the pay-per-views. It just gives you certain events, and that's it. Now, I know UFC made a lucrative deal with ESPN. I think you could still have both coexist. I think you could still have the fights on ESPN tie in the UFC network with ESPN. I'm sure you can work.
They're not with Fox anymore,
deal.
right?
No, that's sort of ending. I think at the end of this year, it's going to be over.
Wow.
So, yeah, I think the last UFC tonight was yesterday. They did another emotional tribute send-off. So we're seeing different platforms making different changes. So I think the way we consume fights, I think that might be the biggest change of 2019. Another thing is interesting is weight classes, sort of as we're comparing UFC and MMA into boxing. Do you think the UFC should add more weight classes? Do you think it might hurt the sport, delegitimize, what it means to win a title?
I mean, they already have so many.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it before on I forgot, it was like I think it was the second episode we did where we talked about how it was better before, how they didn't have that much like weight classes, because it's hard to keep up with all the weight divisions and the champions and the contenders and everything like that. But to me, it's are they gonna get rid of the flyweight division?
See, that's the thing, is they're still making flyweight fights. I mean, Benavidez, I think, got announced he's fighting again at flyweight. There's a couple other fights. So, I mean, it's weird to me. I think they're sort of thinking about it still, maybe testing the waters. If they are going to get rid of the 135-pound division, 125,
yeah.
The flyweight division, 125-pound division, and move all the fighters up to 135, I think that they should incorporate the 165-pound division and go instead of, when you get, because it's 125 right now, the current structure and model is 125, 35, 45, 55, 70, 85, 205. So we're going up,
Yeah.
And weight cutting is a big issue. I mean, we could talk about that as well.
And it's interesting because, like, for the question of weight classes, like, I feel like I don't mind the 165-pound division because I think that like the amount of fighters that they have that are in between lightweight and welterweight, even above to middleweight. I think the 165-pound even necessitates that. And if you take into account the Shark Tank that it's 155, you can take away some of the fighters from there, move them up 10 pounds, and let that sort itself out. And you wouldn't have all this fuss about like how crowded the lightweight division is.
Might be easier to have double champs.
Exactly.
More
but
belts.
My main concern with this is that if you add one, which who's to say that you won't add more? And my main concern is that it may end up like boxing, where it's just like, oh my goodness, there's a super this and a super that.
Yeah.
And like, it's hard to keep track of weight classes. So I'm okay with the weight classes as they are right now. I do think 165 pounds should be added. If not now, then in the near future, just for the sake of clarity between divisions. When it comes to the flyweights, like, oh my goodness, that's just like we said back in the second and first episodes. If that's still up in the air, I think this all hinges upon Cejudo and whether or not he fails against Dillashaw.
Yeah,
because
sort of like
if
another
Dillashaw,
WWE storyline.
exactly, because if this, like, the fight is confirmed, and if Dillashaw does come through and he beats Cejudo, then I think this may very well cancel out the division. So, like you just said, this is like a WWE storyline built right in, and we're just gonna have to wait and see.
I see. For me, do I think they should add in? Because I don't know if I necessarily addressed the point, but I sort of do want to see a 165-pound division. I don't know if I want to see a 195-pound. I mean, I think they should go 35. If they're going to get rid of 125, I think, which I kind of said I think they should. I think they should go 35, 45, 55, 65, 75, 85, and then go to 205. I don't think you really need a 195-pound division. I mean, because once you get higher up, I mean, it's exactly. I don't think you need a 195-pound division. Do I think you need a 165-pound division? I think, you might. I'm sort of trying to think of another change sort of that the UFC should highlight. I mean, I think those are the two biggest ones is the pay-per-view model, the pay-per-view structure, the broadcast, and the weight classes. Other than that, I don't necessarily think that the UFC should change the structure of the sport too much. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but there is a lot of issues going on here. It's going to be interesting to see where the new year takes us. And then we have, obviously, to close out the new year, we have Jones versus Gustafsson, which we can sort of offer you a pretty mini preview now if you want to sort of do it just to sort of cap off. For me, I think, like we talked about before, and we got into it a little bit with the whole DC aspect, it might be a pick'em fight. I don't necessarily think John Jones is a favorite. They both have had the same amount of time off, if you think about it, which is kind of astonishing, but I think it's sort of a pick'em fight. I mean, whoever wins, it's gonna do great for the light heavyweight division. I think if Gus wins, it's not gonna hurt it will hurt John Jones's legacy in the conversation for the GOAT, but I don't think it'll hurt the sport. You can still have Jones move up, but for me, I kind of see I don't know where the fight is going. It's a pick'em fight. I can't see the fight going certain ways, like with
I mean, like, I think it's just Jones by decision. I think he just.
Yeah.
I don't think this is going to end in stoppage. Like, my gut feeling, I haven't had this sort of feeling for a fight in some time, but for some reason, I just think it's going to be.
I could see Jones by submission. I don't necessarily think he could stop. I mean, I don't think he can knock him out clean, but I think he can TKO him. But I sort of see a submission. I don't know why. Sort of thinking of breaking down the fight. Where I think it comes down to is because the first fight was so close, again, it's going to be a pick'em fight, right? And again, I just don't know who has the edge. Who, to me, yeah, okay, Jones, it's an intriguing fight. The sort of hype behind it we haven't sort of gotten into because, I mean, there's different other storylines going on. You have Oscar and Dana going back and forth. The whole Greg Hardy and Rachel Ostovich.
Do we want to get into that?
Dilemma. I mean, to me, it's a sort of a black and white issue. The UFC messed up. Then you got public pressure. I mean, if Rachel Ostovich says she doesn't mind, had the conversation with the UFC, I think us in the, like, not necessarily that we're the members of the media, but I think the media itself should sort of move on.
They
from the
tend to overblow a
situation,
lot of things too,
focus on different
and
things.
I have to say that too because I am part of the media as per my job. But yeah, the media does tend to overblow some issues into these overblown, exacerbated things just for the sake of a headline. But if she says it's like Dana said, and I can't believe I'm saying this again, but I agree with Dana White.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
if she says that it's okay to be on that card, then her opinion is the only one that matters, right? And she seems to have no problem with it, and let her fight, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I watched Brendan Schwab. He was going off on the UFC.
Yeah.
How he's like, you guys are idiots for putting Greg Hardy.
Yeah, it was a big mistake. I think they did make an honest mistake. They didn't need the bad publicity.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can get it. Like the message you're what's it called? Like you're putting out a guy that's been accused of domestic abuse with a girl that's been a victim of domestic abuse on the same card. But as Damien said, I'm like, what's she gonna say? I mean, I don't know. I don't think she's gonna pull out for that. I mean, I think she's already been through training camp and everything, so she's prepared herself to fight. But that's just what the UFC did. I mean, to me, it doesn't make sense. I'm like, I kind of agree with Brendan Schwab, but to me, it doesn't really make sense to put Greg Hardy on that card. I don't really understand why they're trying to hype up Greg Hardy like he's this beast. I don't know.
I mean, the UFC, I feel like they didn't need the bad publicity, a mistake
Yeah,
on their part.
they were gonna get that regardless.
I think, that they should just move on from it.
Yeah.
It is sort of a stain. It's unnecessary. I hope that it doesn't sort of take away the narrative of the the ESPN card. I believe it's the first ESPN card of the year.
Mhm. Let's
So,
just
I
look
mean,
forward to a good fight with 12 gauge.
That's what I mean.
Who's coming
So
back too? So
I just think let's move on from it
for
and
sure.
focus on sort of the passionate aspects of the sport, the great fights that are coming up in the new year.
Mhm.
I mean, anything else you guys would want to touch
Yeah,
on
I
coming
mean-
into the new year? Or
I mean, we're looking
leading up?
we're looking so much forward to the new year, but 2018's been a pretty good year for fights. I think. I just want to
Yeah,
ask you.
just to sort of wrap it
Yeah,
up.
I just want to wrap
2018.
it up. I want to ask you guys because I have mine in mind. But what was your favorite fight of the year of
Boxing or
2018?
MMA, right?
Boxing, MMA, anything. Like, what was your favorite fight?
Favorite fight had to be Canelo Triple G2.
Really?
Because I'm
Okay.
a huge Canelo fan. I
Mhm.
have a rooting interest in the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was one of those, not necessarily like movie style back and forth classic drag 'em out a la Ward and Gotti, which we talked about earlier. But I think the second Canelo and Triple G fight sort of exemplified the highest levels of boxing and what you get when you have the two best fighters
Yeah,
in the
100%.
division, the best fighting the best. And it was sort of like, I would consider it like a dog fight, like a drag 'em out sort of back and forth. Kind of, you had different shifts of momentum, not drastically. There was no knockdown, no guys that really got rocked. But I thought it was like a dogfight, pinnacle, high level boxing where you had Canelo come forward, which
He doesn't
which
usually do.
Triple G's trainer Abel Sanchez called for, fans were calling
Yep.
for. He delivered, and then you have Triple G
Mexican
who had to
style.
sort of dig deep and find something and push back. There was resistance in the fight. So for me personally, that was sort of my favorite fight of the year, classic fight of the year.
Mhm.
I don't know about you guys. What do you think, Damien?
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna go to a really, really dark horse of the year. Do you guys remember Zabit versus Kyle Bochniak?
Yeah, that was a great fight.
That
Yeah.
to me was just like just standing and banging for most of the goddamn fight. I was on my seat for that. And that's where I became not only a Bochniak fan who just fought at the 231 card, but also Zabit. I mean, that's a guy you guys got to look out for in the new year. I think he's gonna bring some heat. And I just that war basically between the two, like Bochniak basically being a zombie in the latter rounds, just keep on coming forward. They're both tired, but they kept swinging and swinging, and it was just like that. Those fights to me is why I love to be a fight fan, and that fight like demonstrated why it was such an just sheer will and determination and grit by both parties, and they just wanted to keep swinging until the one couldn't go anymore. And when you get too tough for your own good, it really shows you that you are in this because you love this game so much that you're going to do anything possible to win. So Zabit and Kyle, like That to me is my 2018 fight of the year. What about you, Yusuf?
Me, oh, man, I agree with Marcus. The Canelo and Triple G 2.
Yeah, the second fight. Yeah.
Yeah, that was just two guys at the top of their game, going toe to toe. I want to say McGregor and Khabib because of the whole story and everything, and how Khabib, he basically this is the moment that he was like waiting for years to prove that he's better than McGregor. And we all saw what he did, and he backed up his talk, and he absolutely demolished McGregor. I would say that to me is like, when I think of 2018, I'm gonna think of it as that fight and what happened after the fight too, when Khabib jumped over the fence and became a big talk in sports, especially. Really, it for the wrong reasons. It was right and wrong reasons, because it also brought attention to the UFC, because it just went all over the world. But yeah, those two fights, in my opinion, so I'm gonna look back in 2018, and those two fights is gonna be in my mind about what left an impression. But there was so many. Like, one thing that I won't is, you guys don't really. It's what happened between Logan Paul and KSI.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's they try. Yeah, I know that's not part of the
Something
fight
to highlight
game.
about that though is, apparently there's that aspect, but apparently, what was the fight? I believe it was YouTube. They had a partnership with YouTube or a streaming service, and apparently 10 million people tuned into the fight.
Yeah.
And there's rumors that the Wilder and Fury 10 million people illegally streamed the fight. So I mean, the pay-per-view numbers are a little bit skewed.
They charged
which
like
highlights, the change that maybe
they
like
charged
you
like
said.
$6. I think it was like $6 or $7 to stream the
So I
fight.
definitely think, I think we can all agree, like, the most important sort of change that we want to see in UFC, and maybe even boxing, because you still have Showtime, is the changing of the pay-per-view model. It's dying. You can sort of see how it's dying, how people are consuming content now, and it's sort of like not even like an internet age, a subscription age. Subscription to Amazon Prime, subscription to Netflix, Crave, whatever it is. You have different subscriptions.
I just got a notification. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. It was one championship is gonna be on Bleach Report Live.
Yeah,
That's where
they
they're
have a
gonna
deal
stream
with
their live events.
the TNT, which
So,
is
yeah,
Turner.
so they signed. That's like it's what's it called? It's the Attitude
And
Era
I believe
all over. again.
I believe Bleacher Report Live, BR Live, you have to pay a subscription for as well.
Yeah.
So I
for
mean, there
sure.
you go. We have a sort of subscription content now, sort of tying in again to wrap up
Reddit that
the
shit.
year. We talked about the fight of the year. Who are your guys' fighter of the year? Could be MMA, could be boxing.
Okay.
I'll let you guys kick that one off.
You want to say yours, Damien?
I'll go first.
Whether
I'll
the
go
biggest
first.
impact as wins, it doesn't matter.
Two letters, DC.
Yeah,
100%.
that's a very good point.
ESPN just put out that article where he was top 3 of the most impressive athletes, and I couldn't agree more. My goodness, from winning in January against Ozdemir, to knocking out the heavyweight champ and becoming a 2-weight world champ, to just winning all 3 of his fights this year and solidifying his position as the current pound-for-pound GOAT, in my opinion, right now. And all that's left to do is that inevitable rematch with John Jones.
Yeah.
So the intrigue is there, the narrative is there, but for his achievements specifically in regards to combat sports, you're not going to find any better than DC in the year 2018.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with him. It's DC for sure, because you think about what he did this year.
I believe he had
beat
3
Miocic.
wins. Yeah,
He beat Miocic. He beat Lewis.
yeah, and Lewis.
Yeah, right. So I agree, because he defended his belt twice, and he won the heavy. Or he won the heavyweight belt. He defended that belt. Then he defended, I think.
The light. No,
Yeah.
he
Was it
has
light heavyweight or no?
So I think he defended light heavyweight against Ozdemir.
Yeah,
he
he
won.
kicked that off
He won
first.
heavyweight from Miocic, and then he defended heavyweight against Lewis.
Against Lewis, exactly. So, yeah, it's hard to argue. I'm trying to think of maybe an argument, for argument's sake, to sort of come up with a a fighter that challenges
Khabib only
DC.
fought once, right?
Khabib only fought, I believe, once or twice. He beat Ali Quinta, and then he beat.
But that was like
But in
that was
terms
like a
of
spar.
what's
you want
at
spar?
stake, in terms of like what's at stake, and in terms of what's at stake, and marquee value, I do think DC is the fighter of the year for 2018. I mean, what he did, it's hard to argue with what he did and what he accomplished, becoming a double champ in light heavyweight and heavyweight.
Or Tyson Fury.
But he's only had, I think he had 3 fights this year, but 2 against relative tomato cans. No offense to them. Against
Yeah,
Wilder.
that's true. Cormier
mean,
makes sense because he fought.
Cormier,
in my
it's
opinion,
hard to say. Like, I mean, Canelo's only had 1 fight this year, minus this fight coming up. The marquee fighters. I mean, that to me, it's DC. It's hard to argue against anyone. Last year, you can make the argument, I believe, Cody Garbrandt.
Yeah.
I think he was the fighter of the year for a lot of people last year because of because of his he had 4 wins in that calendar year. He kicked off basically unranked, became the champion, defeated the greatest bantamweight. Now, sort of to wrap up again, sort of maybe the last sort of topic or points to cover. We've talked about what to look forward to in 2019 and what we want to see changed. But the most important part of the sport is, whether it's MMA or boxing, is the fighters themselves. Who's the fighter that you're most interested in? Doesn't have to be necessarily wins and losses. Could be his persona. There's a lot of guys out there. Who's your guys' fighter to watch for 2019?
I'm gonna say Max Holloway, because I believe also, since we're from here, we're from Toronto. I think he's developed a very big fan base over here in Canada, especially because he's embraced the 6, as we call it over here. And I'm also, of course, intrigued by the matchups that's planned for him next year in the lightweight division. So I think Max Holloway's 20. We thought like the end of 2018 is basically just the start of like the star power of Max Holloway. So I'm intrigued to see what's in store for him, and I don't know what's for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, like I said just now, for favorite fight of the year with Zabit, he's definitely someone to watch for 2019, I think, in my opinion. But again, he's still a relative unknown and dark horse at the moment. So I gotta agree with Yusuf too, Max Holloway. And it does help a lot that McGregor's star power was diminished a little bit by the loss to Khabib. So, and what a performance by Holloway last Saturday. So, this, like Yusuf said, this is just the beginning of his journey into relative superstardom in the UFC. So I definitely think Max Holloway, there's nothing but good things in store for him in 2019, and rightfully so. I think he deserves all the success in the world. And Toronto is such a great market for fight fans in general.
Yep.
And the fact that he's embraced us fully, like 10th Island this, 10th Island that, he's definitely going to get the support in that superstardom status.
Yeah.
I want to talk about how I think we have the best fan base in all of the fight game in general, because it's just we bring it out. Everybody comes to support, and it's just Dana White said it a while ago. I don't know why he doesn't say it no more, but he said like Canada is the mecca of MMA. I don't see it as like, it's obviously you got New York, you got LA, but even you look at like the McGregor and Mayweather tour. I mean, look at the 4 stops that they went to: London, New York, L.A., and then here. And who had the best crowd? Bar none, it was us. It wasn't L.A., it wasn't New York, it wasn't London. I think Dana White understands that I always call it like it's even for the Raptors too. I always say we're the best kept secret in a way in MMA and in basketball, of course, because it's obviously a combat sport podcast. But yes, I think we are the best kept secret in the fight game. So shout out to Canada in general.
For me, the fighter, sort of to wrap up, the fighter to watch for 2019. Holloway for me is right up there. There's a lot of interesting things with what you can do. I mean, he just fought, so there's that. It's fresh on everyone's mind.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's hard to pinpoint. I sort of have trouble pinpointing one guy that stands out as the guy on the rise, the guy to watch. But in the MMA world, for me, the most interesting guy to watch is going to be Israel Adesanya.
Oh, how to
For me,
totally
I think he's going to
slipped
be
my
the most
mind.
interesting guy to watch. I think next year for him, he is going to be the breakout fighter of. You can make the argument he's already broken out
Oh yeah,
in 2018, but for me personally, I think he hasn't sort of hit that
he has the package right now.
mainstream sort of.
Mhm.
That's how I determine who's the the superstars of the sport, where
Mhm.
the regular everyday person
Yeah.
knows who he is, or at least knows of him. For me, he's going to be in MMA.
Mhm.
He is going to be the most important fighter to watch.
Mhm.
And the most interesting fighter for me to watch. Rather, I would argue more him so than Max Holloway, because just of his
Fair.
meteoric
That's a
rise.
fair
You see
point.
the rise,
Mhm.
of Adesanya fighting Anderson in February upcoming.
Mhm.
In boxing, sort of just to tie in, to think about the most important fighter to watch in boxing, might still be Canelo because of the DAZN deal. Interesting to see where the DAZN deal goes.
Still a
There's a
young
lot
cat.
of interesting
Mhm.
fights. He's in the prime of his career.
Yep.
I believe he's only
Mhm.
28, 29.
Yep.
So he's just entering the prime of his career.
Mhm.
It's very interesting to see where he goes. So, I mean, for me, boxing-wise, it's probably going to be the heavyweight, middleweight divisions, those guys there, Anthony Joshua, Canelo. But for MMA, yeah, I think Israel Adesanya, the last style bender, whatever you want to call him, I think for me, he's going to be the most interesting guy to watch because he's fighting right in the beginning in February. He's got Anderson Silva on the horizon. So for me personally, I believe he's going to be the most interesting guy to watch. So that's been a great year. We started towards the
100%.
end of the year, episode 4. This is our
Mhm.
last episode of the year. As you know, the holidays coming up.
Mhm.
Sort of right when the new year comes, we'll sort of kick off episode 5. Look forward to the new year. Damien, anything you want to touch on?
I just
in
want to
terms
give,
of,
I just want to give a shout out to everyone who's supported us right now. I mean, we're still young and we're still kind of testing the waters a little bit to get this thing going. But like Marcus said in the beginning of our first episode, we're just 3 guys from the GTA who love this sport. We love everything about combat sports, and we just want to give a special shout out and thank you to every one of us who sent us nothing but great things and appreciative comments, and your support and your motivation keeps us going. And we just love providing this sort of content to you guys. So thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, as the Damien always touches on and allude to, and I'll sort of touch on now, is don't forget to like, subscribe, all that fun stuff.
Follow
on social
Instagram
media,
account. Tell your friends.
Twitter, Instagram, YouTube.
To me with our friends,
And,
so we
we
can
are
be
available
friends.
on iTunes podcasts, right? We have an iTunes podcast, Spotify, so you can give us a listen there. So we're looking
Yes,
to
sir.
change up a lot of things. Who knows what the new year brings? Maybe a studio, different setup, sort of. So a lot of different things are going to change, and we'll sort of look back on this year of where we started and where we grow from. So it's been a great episode. And
And to anybody that thought we were going to stop after episode 1, we're still here. To this day.
that's a wrap.
Yes, sir.
Happy holidays, guys.